The UC military is one of the more prominent factions within Starfield, along with the Freestar Collective, Region Industries, and the Crimson Fleet. Specifically today, we're going to go in depth with the UC Vanguard questline. We're going to analyze whether the storyline was good, bad, decent, and if the characters were compelling, the plot was engaging, and so forth. I would love to do a full-blown video essay of the entire game at some point, but it's incredibly huge. And if I did that, it would take forever. So instead, I'll be doing these storyline breakdowns, making things a lot easier on me, and will help me to pump out more videos more often. If this is something you want me to continue with, just leave a like and comment down below what questline you want me to follow next. But regardless, let's get on with the video. Of course, the first thing to do is talk to Tuala, I think that's how you pronounce it, at Mast, and he will ask you to go through some training, and if you pass, you get to become a Vanguard. It's that easy. I really wish my recording wasn't corrupted, but during this, you take a tour of the past revolving around the war between the UC Vanguard and the Freestar Collective. I guess years ago, they had a disagreement which led to a huge war, which caused the creation of xenoweapons. Xenoweapons, for those that don't know, are weapons based on alien creatures, whether that be training the creature, altering their DNA, and so forth. Long story short though, both sides agree to sign a treaty which states that they can't under any circumstances use xenoweapons ever again because there were so many casualties. Keep this in the back of your mind. Now going into the meat of things, we're sent to a planet called Tau Ceti. Man, all of these things are so hard to pronounce. And when you land, things don't look right. I need to commend Bethesda here. They really set the atmosphere for what's about to happen, and as far as I know, they have never really put much care into this before. Usually in Skyrim or Fallout, they kind of half-ass it, so it's great to see that they changed things here. It legitimately kept me on my toes and had me wondering what was going to happen next. There's one thing here that ruined the moment though. Going back to that little tour thing back at Mast, there was a statue that showed what is called a Terramorph, essentially the death claw of Starfield, and of course they wait till the end of the tour to show this to you. Then right after you go to the planet, you kind of see what I'm getting at here. The hint was so obvious. I didn't get that oh shit factor because I knew it was gonna happen. I was expecting it as soon as I landed my ship. It's unfortunate, but this is a Bethesda game and I have to expect these kinds of things. But regardless, I kept pushing forward until an NPC started talking over the radio. Comms, whatever you want to call it in this game. Her name is Hadrian and she pretty much states that it knows that we're here, insinuating that there is a Terramorph nearby. I also just love whichever companion is with you will comment on what's going on. I had Sam with me and he was being sort of a smart ass. He was a little scared and I kind of loved every minute of it. Though eventually you do meet with Hadrian face to face and she states that this certain Terramorph is different from the rest. Essentially, Terramorphs, for whatever reason, you'll find out later, follow humanity wherever they go. Usually Terramorph outbreaks happen within 50 to 75 years after the colonization of a planet. This specific Terramorph we're about to encounter showed up only after a few years of colonization. That being said, you can see that there will be a bigger problem within this questline that involves this. But the objective now is to kill the beast and get some tissue samples from it. Hadrian wants us to do these menial tasks beforehand as well as set up defenses to make our life easier. But since Starfield isn't exactly the most difficult game out there and I was pretty loaded up on gear, I just chose to take out the Terramorph head on with a minigun and it worked out pretty well. This brings me to one of the complaints about the game overall. I understand there's difficulty sliders and shit, but the game still feels easy regardless. I understand I am only on normal difficulty in this recording, but on a later playthrough, I rose the difficulty and it wasn't much harder if I'm being honest. I'll keep this critique in my back pocket until I finally do, or if I do a full-on analysis of the entire game or something along those lines. Before we go any further, I think it is best to briefly touch on some more backstory in this game's lore. There was once a settlement called Londinian in the world of Starfield which got overrun by Terramorphs. They pretty much called it Ground Zero. So now, here, Hadrian looks at the tissue sample and tells us that the DNA or something is an exact match. Or at least the mutation is the same, I guess. This is the part that isn't really elaborated on at all in the game. It was a tool to make the stakes higher and for the player to potentially visit the ghost settlement of Londinian later on in the questline. I don't know, it just feels like a shitty explanation to me. I would have rather had something totally unique. Let's say maybe they found an unknown mutation in the creature that allowed growth acceleration and more pronounced reproduction within their species. That would have been a lot scarier than just saying that the DNA was an exact match of the kind that is in another city that we don't really care about. Let me know if you disagree with me in the comments and explain why, or if I missed something. Anyways, Hadrian tasks us with bringing this sample to a friend of hers, more so a colleague. His name is Dr. Percival Walker. We get a gene tag so we can confirm that this is coming directly from Hadrian. I feel like this is more a problem with the game rather than the quest, but I hate the fact that this is a fast traveling simulator at this point. I wish I could just wander and eventually get to my quest objective. It just doesn't feel natural. It pronounces the fetch questy nature of Bethesda games. Games like Skyrim and Fallout have fetch quests, but it doesn't feel like fetch quests because you get sidetracked often. Here you don't have that. It's just a point A to point B all of the time. But regardless, we do need to talk to our commander first and foremost, and I swear to God, he has the funniest fucking reaction to you taking out a Terramorph. Just watch this.
You killed a Terramorph on your first mission. If I could be frank for a moment, holy shit.
High-key love how they implemented this dialogue selection with the reaction involved, because to be frank, if I was in this universe, I would have had the same reaction as Twala. It's a stark contrast from Skyrim when you were a literal dragonborn and a god, and no one has a genuine reaction aside from the first time you absorb a dragon soul, and even then, it's a little underwhelming, so seeing it here was pretty cool. Then comes the part where I'm not very fond of the quest overall. This is the start of running around, doing errands for people so they may or may not tell you the location of this certain individual. You first talk to this dude, Octai. I cannot pronounce these names. Oh my God. He says that he doesn't know where he is. You then talk to this other dude named Lau. He doesn't tell us shit until we pay the debt that Percival has to the other dude we talked to. Another dead end. Then we talk to another dude named Cambridge. He tells us to get some research from him that Percival left in a mine, sell it to a dude at the Trade Authority, and then finally talk to Lau again. There's just so many tasks involved here. So much talking to unnecessary people. I don't even understand why Percival must have a debt to begin with. What was the reasoning behind it? If they took this plot point out, nothing would have changed. It's just a cheap way to add game time to the quest. It lacks creativity in my mind. Like, sure, you can probably look at terminals in the mine, gather information through that, but most gamers don't do that. The one positive I will say is that I needed more combat interjected, and this mine did just that, even though the events that came before it to get to this point were kind of lame. Taking out the Terramorph was cool, but it was only one enemy, so clearing this base was engaging and kind of needed. And another thing I liked was the moral conflict with doing this mine mission. Extracting this mineral they were studying will give Octai, I'm just gonna call him Octai, Octai, it gives them the means to produce a drug that will heighten the energy levels of working, making it so they can increase hours and add to their workload. Essentially, you are damning the entirety of the mining crew to pay off one man's debt. Of course, you can argue that you're saving the literal entire galaxy from Terramorph slaughter by finding this person, so I mean, give or take. Regardless, after we hand off the information of the Terramorphs to the doctor, we meet back with Hadrian at Mass to go over everything before we talk to the cabinet of UC Space. But before we do, Hadrian has a heart-to-heart with us. I guess she's the clone daughter of a high-ranking man in the UC Navy, one named Vae Victis. As a matter of fact, he was the former head of the literal Navy, though it's now said that he was executed because of his efforts within Xeno warfare and the use of it on the battlefield. Pretty much a war criminal, though I forgot to mention this. We already know the story because Twala told us when we came back from our mission. It's kind of cool that you have the option to say this to Hadrian. This results in her being sort of calm and glad that you accept her and not judging her based solely on the actions of her relative. Hadrian's a good character. She's very dull at times, speaking mostly about the mission at hand, but she's cool. She gets straight to the point, wants what's best for UC colonies, and so forth. You also get to ask Hadrian on why she has her red as hell eyes. Sadly, it's not as cool as I thought it would be. No genetic modification, nothing like that. It's just a result of extended periods of time in the mines on Mars. Wow, way to make things lame as fuck. Now to the whole basis of this meeting with the cabinet. We need access to Xeno warfare Terramorph data in order to know what's going on with these Terramorph attacks. In order to even access this stuff, we need the permission of the UC, of course, the Freestar Collective, and House Faroon. We will get to those later. The one thing I hate about this meeting though is this dude named Yasin. He's such a stuck-up asshole for like no reason, and I have no idea why Bethesda thought it would be a good idea to have this. I understand the inclusion of someone that has doubts and is skeptical of Terramorph attacks, but to have someone quite literally, forcefully not believing a word we say is so outlandish in my opinion. Like, why the fuck would we schedule a meeting with the cabinet if we were lying? That's just not how things work. We have the Terramorph sample that proves something's going on, so seeing this guy having this argument made no sense at all. It seems like an oversight within Bethesda. Also, this is the same voice actor that I had a problem with within Jedi Survivor. He's just in every single game, and it's kind of tiring. Like I said, the same with like Troy Baker, especially when he has the worst Southern accent I have ever heard. If he can't do the accent, why have the accent in the first place? There has never been a conversation before this where he says he was born in Timbuktu where he has this accent. So why are they forceful? You know what? Whatever. Regardless, out of thin air, an attack breaks out in New Atlantis. Of course, you can guess that it's from the Terramorphs. And I find it so ironic that after this one dude was complaining that he didn't trust us, the literal next minute this shit happens. You could have guessed. It's kind of corny. They just spawn in random spots as well. The cool thing though is that it changes the environment of New Atlantis quite a bit. It gets really foggy, gates have been shut, security is everywhere. It's pretty immersive. I just find it so weird as to why these things randomly showed up as we were having the meeting about them. There is a reason why this happened, but even then I have some issues. Also, there is a plot device that goes nowhere here. I guess the Terramorphs have the ability to mind control people and use them as thralls, but you only see this happen to like 3 people in the entirety of the quest line. Maybe not even that. They go nowhere with this. I can only imagine how much a grander scale they could have gone with it, but no, they just don't. Anyways, we talk with the cabinet again. Hadrian gets her rank reinstated. Our character is tasked with talking with another governing body of the galaxy, and we get citizenship within the United Colonies. At this point, that really doesn't mean anything other than buying a property within the systems, but still that doesn't mean anything because the reward you get after beating the quest line is just a lot better, and it's in line with being a citizen. So like, you getting citizenship and being able to buy a home means nothing. Like, it means shit. So going forward, we're tasked to talk with the Freestar Collective ambassador, as well as from one house, Varun. I decided to talk with Freestar Collective first, and long story short, she's an asshole, and you have to persuade her into giving you the access code. One thing I have to say though about Starfield, I just love how you can have a companion answer for you in some instances. Here at least, Sam co-replied considering he used to be a Freestar Ranger, and the ambassador even recognized him. Anyway, she says no, but all we have to do is persuade, play an honestly not so good minigame of persuading, and then she says yes in approximately 30 seconds. I'm not being serious of this being an actual criticism. I just find it funny she says no, and seconds later she's like, you know what? You're right. My bad, pimp. I also love how she just leads you to a literal code generator. And it's like, here you go. This whole thing was so anticlimactic. But then again, what should I expect? I just had my expectations too high. I don't know. To sum it up, this is a Bethesda-ass questline. And it doesn't get much better when you talk to the House Varun ambassador. All this is fighting through waves of robots, navigate through corridors that look the exact same, overgrown with flora, hallucinating and shit. Some of it's pretty, but also uninteresting. It's so weird though, because this ambassador is just hanging out and hiding. I mean, I can't blame the dude because there's murderous robots out and about, but you can't fault me for thinking this was a big letdown. I really don't know what else to expect. Just something more than this. What I found interesting though is that this dude isn't like the rest of his fellow followers. He isn't violent. He's the opposite. He tells us that he hopes we use these codes for good to change the view on House Varun, to make people believe they're not all bad. It was kind of a breath of fresh air, an ounce of emotion I should say from this so far. Shallow experience. Anyways, we gather the codes and take them to Deputy McIntyre and finally go into the archives. This in and of itself is a letdown as well. You just go through a door, grab the archives, and that's it. I think this is partially my fault because I keep expecting more and more, but it never becomes the thing. I also think this is a bigger problem with Starfield and Bethesda games themselves. Even with simple objectives like this, you hope something will happen, that there will be an obstacle in the way, that something provoking will happen, but now it's a literal point A to point B. They could have added something like a certain individual trying to stop you from getting the archives for reasons such as corruption or a moral standpoint a character's willing to die on. You don't get any of that. It's get this, get that. Oh, and don't forget this type of game. Again, this just may be a me problem, but I don't know. Now, as you already know, within this quest, you become a citizen of UC space, and during this part, it's a shitty oath you have to take that really has no meaning. They try to make it cool being on the roof, overlooking the city and taking the oath, but it just doesn't hit at all. It was quite boring, if I'm honest. Even at some points, I started to browse Twitter during this conversation. But with that over with, we have a certain individual who wants to meet with us in a secure place. This person's name is Francois Sinan, also known as Vae Victis, the person that was heavily involved with the war between the Freestar Collective and UC, specifically with Xeno warfare, who was tried and executed for his crimes during the war, and as you can see, he ain't dead. Governments lied to their population. Some things never change in the future, and he is the father of the chick we rescued during that op. So the storyline is now coming together. Though it is clear from this dude's demeanor that he doesn't mean good business and he shouldn't be trusted, he will most likely try to do something in the future. It's kind of predictable, which in some cases can be good for storylines, but most of the time it isn't. He tells us to talk to one of his associates, and if he doesn't cooperate peacefully, that we know what to do. Yeah, sure. And when getting to this dude, Vae Victis was right. He's very much unwilling to work with us, and it results in violence. I just disabled the engines, boarded the ship. It took a while because fucking Vasco's fat ass won't move out of the goddamn way. Sorry, I got a little carried away there, but this whole thing becomes anticlimactic because the dude offs himself before we could even talk to him. It's unfortunate, but I get it. End yourself before someone can get the information out of you. But still, I wish there was more to it. And it's pretty much the theme of this whole quest line and Starfield of itself. After giving the proof of his death to Vae Victis, all he does is give us another objective to find a robot on a hostile world. Again, Starfield suffers from quests that only deal with point A and point B. You go here, you go there, then go back there again. It's so incredibly boring, mixed in with mediocre writing. It just isn't the best. A boring game will always be way worse than a bad game. Anyways, before we go find this robot, we stop by Hadrian to tell her the news. You have the option to let her know that her father's still alive as well, and she has no idea that he's alive. A weird as fuck situation. At first, she thinks we're joking, which is expected. Then after some time, she's distraught and angry. It's understandable. What sucks is these characters barely show any type of emotion. Yes, they say words that give off the notion of meaning, but they don't actually mean anything when the characters sound like they're reading off of a paper. I mean, play Cyberpunk for an hour and then come back to this game and you'll see what I'm talking about. When we get to the planet, we meet this dude that goes by the name Gel. This dude is a standard merchant, nothing special about him. What I hate in video games though is when a character is like, hey, I know you're looking for this particular person, so you need to pay me X amount of money. And listen, and then the location's yours. And if you don't have the money, don't worry. You're gonna do a meaningless job for me to earn it. It's just so fucking cliche and takes up time that didn't need to be taken up in the first place. Come up with something more meaningful. Or if you're going to go that route, make sure the mission is memorable. In this case, it isn't. You have to look around and find a particular item so you can use it in crafting menu in which the game will give you a tutorial on. It's just stupid. I guess the fun part about this mission is that after saving Kaiser, which is the robot, and putting the battery in him, you go on a mission to hunt down this big monster that was part of the Xeno weapons program. The monster was tough to a certain degree, but as I said before, Starfield isn't exactly a difficult game. Most enemies are bullet sponges, but the overall problems with Starfield are for a completely different video. But pretty much after that, the robot agrees to meet with his ex-teammates, which leads to the next mission for us. When we get back to Hadrian, he mentions that there are these creatures that eat terramorphs, a way for nature to take its course, not let these things get too out of control. They were called the Aceles, and they were thought to be extinct, with no hope to calm down the terramorph population. But Hadrian says there were some groups of them that have been located, giving way for an option towards the end of the quest line. I will get to it later, and when the game shows us these Aceles creatures, Jesus Christ, these guys are a lot bigger than I expected. No wonder they kept the terramorph population at bay. But keep that in the back of your mind. Hadrian says it will let nature take its course, meaning no more human interference. There's a part of the end of this quest line that really grinds my gears regarding this topic. But now is the time to take a trip to one of the safest, most loving and beautiful places in Starfield. That's right, you guessed it, it's Londinian. Yeah, this place is, it's literal shit. I have some things to say about this planet, but we'll get to it later. What I will say now though, is the place is extremely cold, unwelcoming, and is overrun, air quotes, by terramorphs, even though you come across like maybe 3 or 4. I guess when you consider these guys are essentially boss fights, it makes sense that there's so little of them in the game. You have to balance things, but still it makes it so the effect of suspense is kind of gone. So what exactly is our mission here on the planet? Well, we have to get samples of the terramorphs and get enough data on how to stop their rampant colonization on planets where humans inhabit. Here's where we also find out where terramorphs come from. from Heatleeches, an animal that infests every single inhabitable planet. They infest their way onto ships, and with time will transform into the beasts we know and love. I actually found this reveal to be quite surprising. You see these little guys everywhere in the game, so now wherever I do see one, I will blow it to smithereens after witnessing this. But the true plot twist happens moments later. You know that machine that turned the baby Terramorph into an adult? Turns out that Vae Victis was one of the first people to witness this machine do its magic. It turns out Vae Victis destroyed the facility and the people within, only to keep the Lazarus plant a secret only to him, to keep it as a weapon if needed. So what does this mean? It means that only he could have unleashed the Terramorph attacks on the planet we visited and at New Atlantis. He was behind this whole thing. Granted, I had this feeling deep in my gut when we first met him. I knew he was going to be the villain, which I disliked in this questline, but also I do love the plot twist. It made sense with the story and kept me on my toes. After this, we fight the big boss of the Terramorphs, the Anomaly. I wish I could say it fought different than the other Terramorphs, but it just has more health. I should have expected it more of this whole questline. Regardless, since we're the only ones that know Vae Victis is still alive, Hadrian asks us to talk to him and figure out why he did what he did. It seems fair, and surprisingly, he just outright confesses. Does the UC not record anything this guy says in his room? Do they not keep tabs on him at all times? After what he's done, you would think they would. I take this as showing the incompetence of the UC. Yeah, at this point, Freestar all the way. Like, geez. He explains this as revenge for the shit that the UC did. Of course, it is about that. The man is just plain evil. At a later point in the conversation, he gives us a choice of outing him or not, and he will give us a reward. And I was role-playing as a character who is morally right, so I chose to out him in the cabinet. So I did. I gave the evidence to the cabinet, and they of course accepted the confession that we gave. I also gave the go-ahead to execute this dude, because in my eyes, he deserved to die, especially since he was already in custody in the first place and nothing worked. And after this, we then get the choice to either tackle the Terramorph problem with the Aceles or a weird nanobot thing to handle the job. The latter being the more fast option at the cost of a little bit of risk. Maybe it mutates, maybe it doesn't, but who knows. And I chose to go with the Aceles for the simple fact that it was nature's way of dealing with the problem. It's safe and doesn't involve human interference. But if you chose this option, companions will be mad at you because this solution isn't quick enough. Literally all of the companions say this. It's annoying that this is the case. I wish at least one of them would have sided with my decision, but no. Also, you had the decision to either destroy the Lazarus plant, let the UC do its thing, or tell the UC to work with the Freestar Collective to solve the problem. I chose the last option because that makes the most sense to let the two factions come to a conclusion themselves. But if you chose this option, again, all of your companions will get upset because you didn't destroy the thing. It's fucking stupid. Wouldn't it make more sense for the two factions to come up with that conclusion themselves? Not leave it up to me, a weird-ass stranger. Again, at least have a couple companions agree with me. That's all I ask. It's like the developers made it very clear what the right decision was, instead of letting the player come up with that conclusion by themselves. I thought this was supposed to be a sandbox. I understand actions have consequences, but not all characters are supposed to share the same moral compass. That's the beauty of creating characters. They have differences. Why do no characters have differences in this game? I don't understand. Anyway, the reward you get for this questline is some money and a brand spanking new penthouse you can decorate to your heart's content. And going further, you can do various missions when it comes to the Red Devils, and when you do enough of them, you can recruit Hadrian as a follower. Now, what do I think of this questline? At best, it was mediocre. Although Bethesda put its best writing into Starfield, it still isn't enough. I hate comparing, but when you look at Starfield and Cyberpunk side by side, there's a clear winner, and it isn't Starfield. A lot of it is just half-assed writing, predictable plot twists, and dialogue that seems uninteresting or forcefully delivered. And it doesn't help that this game looks very last gen with the multiple loading screens. It's just not for me. I honestly think this is a product of a non-voice protagonist as well. I get it. It helps with immersion with an RPG where you can pick your own dialogue options and voice it yourself, but it's at the risk of line delivery of other NPCs or followers. Because think about it, you're in the booth, you're saying your lines, but you don't have another character talking back with you, so you don't have that chemistry. You're essentially just reading a script. You're reading a book, and there's no magic involved with that. I would have rather had a voice protagonist, but I understand it's a matter of taste, and I know some people love having a non-voice protagonist. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to see more of this style of video, let me know. As far as full game critiques go, Cyberpunk will be the next, of course. It may take a while. I do have a job. I have only so many days off, so I'll try to get it to you as quick as possible. Maybe I'll do a video comparing that game with Starfield, Cyberpunk and Starfield, and kind of do like a comparison and see what game's better, and maybe you guys will love it. But anyway, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.